I'll call roll now. Ms. D. Jones.
Present.
Ms. S. Jones. Ms. S. Jones is absent for the open session. Mr. Lane.
Here.
Ms. Miller. Here. Dr. Roberts.
Present.
Mrs. Fowl.
Present.
Mrs. Rhoda Collins.
Present.
We have a quorum.
We will say the pledge. The first item on our agenda is always the Spirit of Excellence Award. So this goes to students, outstanding students and staff who are truly making an impact. Tonight we are celebrating a group of students from Sumner High School who decided to do something positive in reaction to the gun violence in our community. Sumner student Mike Chickanen was among the children lost this past summer. However, for many Sumner students, this was not the first time they have been impacted by gun violence. I would like to ask Dr. Sean Nichols and his students to come up to the podium. And if Dr. Nichols could start us out with a few words, and then we'd love to hear from any of the students who feel comfortable to share what inspired them to put together a peaceful protest event for their school community. So the students are Robin Kalia, Stefan Riggins, Demarshay Carnes, Regina Washington, and Nicholas Ford. And I would like to point out that 4 of these 5 students are freshmen who are demonstrating that they are a new generation of strong, thoughtful leaders.
This all got organized because our teacher, Mr. Ray Cummings, gave us a doodle asking us what could we do to come together as a community to stop the violence.
We've been planning it for a little minute too, so I'm glad to see that it came together.
I wanted to say something because I had lost a cousin to gun violence. She was only 16. I wanted to do this peace march because I lost 2 brothers to gun violence, and that's why I did this. I hope that they learn we can do other things like sports and stuff, like go to school, good job, something we can do better.
Tony Thompson, Taylor Banks, Antonio Cox, more solid. No more solid.
Good evening, everyone. Is it on? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Board, superintendent, and all cabinet, and community. Thank you. I wanted to say I'm really proud of all of our students here, and these young people really gave me a lot of motivation. And one day, the teachers approached me and said that the students, our students really, really want to do something about violence in our community. So I met with them in my office, and they all explained to me how they have been impacted by violence in their families. So I told them, I said, if you're really serious, I will stand right behind you. So the teachers were really at the forefront in helping organize this event. So Mr. Northway, could you come forward?
Good evening. I'd like to make this short and sweet. After teaching in the district the last, 24 years, I've been teaching a lesson on political activism at the beginning of the school year. And so the students, got the lesson, and I was so thrilled that I come back to school on a Monday, didn't realize that we had a gun violence at one of our football games, but the students came and they said, we want to do a peace march. And I'm like, really, a peace march? Like, I want to do a peace march. And so Ray Cummings and myself, we got with the students. They organized it. They did the signs. I mean, I was just so proud to see them take it by what we would call the horns and run with it. So I'd like to bring up, who would like to come up and speak? Come on, guys. You're not shy, that shy, I know. So come on, somebody come up. Please.
Good evening. So, like, basically, like one day we were in class. It was physics, and we just got Mr. Cummings as our substitute teacher. And one day he was a do now on the board that asked, "What can we do to stop the violence in our community?" You know, because what happened at a previous football jamboree over the weekend. And basically, a lot of various things were put out that what we should do. And then Regina actually said that we should have a peace march or a march, you know what I'm saying, or a protest.
Yes.
So basically, he actually liked the idea. He told us to write it on the board, and we basically asked, can we go to the principal and ask the administration if it was all right. And he was with it. So he told us he would get to us, but we didn't want to just end right there. So we start talking to other teachers, and other teachers were on board, and people just started getting in tune, and yeah.
We're proud of you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But nah. And then, one of y'all want to talk?
The reason that I believe this would be a good idea was because I myself lost 2 cousins to gun violence, so I know the pain. So, and it's just like the younger generations is dying, and we need them because we the future, and we got to work together to make sure that not only our community, but our city, is not affected by violence.
Good job. She has never lost for words in the classroom. I promise you that. Exactly.
Right. The reason why I wanted to be in this protest is because I lost a brother to gun violence, and I also lost a younger brother due to something else, but I'm not going to get into that. But the main reason why I really wanted to do this because us and the following students at Sumner, we all go through stuff, and I really feel like we can do this. We can do this together, you know. And for us being students, us teachers, and us parents, like y'all parents. I almost said us parents. I mean y'all parents and us students. We want y'all teachers. It's like since we students, we want to let y'all know that we can do this just as much as y'all want to do this. We can do this just as much as y'all want to do this. So I really wanted to be in this because since we the students, we're gonna do this. We're gonna make it happen. So we really talked about it. We talked about it for days. Not that we talked about it for one day. We constantly. Even though we really think it wasn't gonna happen, but we was like, no. In our head, we was like, it's gonna happen. It got to. So we actually. And guess what? It actually happened. We actually happy that it happened. And then when Nichols told us that we was coming down here, we was like, oh my God, we coming down here. Oh we finna have fun, We never been down here, so thank y'all.
How y'all doing tonight? I got involved with the peace protest, peace march, because one day after school, Mr. Nichols told me, he was like, so we have some freshmen that want to do a peace protest. And him knowing I'm kind of into black activism, he told me, he was like, okay, let's do it. So Monday we met with, a Monday morning I met with all of them. And I'm like, let's do it. So I was their senior sponsor. So with that being said, I was just like, all right, let's get it. So I'm like, is this gonna happen like a month from now? They was like, no, we want it to happen next week. I was like, next week? That's not enough time to plan. They was like, yes it is, we got it. So I just like, let's put it together, let's call who we gotta call, let's get downtown, let's get security. Because initially we wanted to do it on the street, but I guess we couldn't do it on the street, so we did it on the football field because we still wanted it to happen just to get that point across that if nobody sees the violence, we do. And we are the violence, not saying that we are the violence. Hold on, I'll put that.
You're right, we got you.
We're not the violence, but we're like part of the generation that has to do with the violence.
You're living. You're living.
So we just wanted to show like, hey, we all ain't violent. This generation, the whole generation is not violent. So it's not just, oh yeah, that little generation right there, they violent. We don't deal with them. No, it's not the whole generation. It's just, we got some people that want to do it, and we got people that's just influenced by the violence. But we're not influenced by the violence.
All right. Well, thank you. And also, by the way, there is a video that Nick had made of the violence, of the Peace March. It's called Making of a March. And so, again, I believe it's on Sumner Streaming, right? And again, if you have the time to look it up, it's a fabulous video. Please see it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You all have shown tremendous leadership, and you're making your school and the district and our city very proud. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting us come up here. Or everybody, for letting us come up here. I'm sorry. And you guys for coming out.
So the next item on our agenda is approval and adoption of the October 8th, 2019 regular business meeting agenda. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the October 8th regular business meeting agenda.
Is there a second?
I second. I'd like to move to amend the agenda to place a discussion to form a committee regarding the superintendent's evaluation.
Is there a second to Dr. Roberts' amendment?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? Okay, we will vote on the amendment to vote on the motion to amend the agenda to include an item to form a committee for the superintendent evaluation. Dr. Roberts, where were you suggesting that be added?
It's an information item.
So I need you, where?
Information item D. We have C, final opening school update. Can we add it as a D?
So that is the superintendent's report.
Okay. And let's move to business item B.
That is still under the superintendent's report. So you could add in another number before adjournment, or you could put it under reports of the board.
Okay. I'll make it a part of my board report.
So it can't be, if you want it to be a discussion, my recommendation would be to either add it like as a new item A at the top of the reports of the board, or to make a new item 10, to give it its own.
Okay, let's give it its own number.
Okay, so will be a new item 10. Is there, we are ready for a vote on that amendment. Ms. Lewis?
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones is absent. Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
No.
Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Powell?
Yes.
Mrs. Brody Powell?
No. So there will be a new item 10, discussion of the formation to create a committee. We need to vote, I believe, Mr. St. Omer, on the agenda as a whole. Okay. Is there any? Okay. Is there a mode we have to? Tell me the wording, please. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I move that we approve the agenda as amended with the addition of number 10.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Ms. Lewis?
Ms. D. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones is absent. Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
No.
Dr. Rogers?
Yes.
Mrs. Fowle?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Mrs. Rhodey Collins?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Moving on to public comment, Mr. Bill Monroe. Go ahead, Mr. Monroe, thank you.
Good evening. I think my clock is off. Somebody's beat me out of about
Could we
45
restart
seconds.
his clock, because we had some confusion up here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm here for several reasons. But number one, I'm Bill Monroe, and I represent a non-for-profit called Harriet Tubman, and I also represent the effort to save the Beaumont High School campus from closing and opening a school called Harriet Tubman Preparatory High School and Career Center, with emphasis on dealing with many of the homeless problems that we have in our community. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say something about a Channel 4 segment that I witnessed the other day, and I thought it was a negative. And I saw Channel 4 highlighting some of the high school kids for not fighting for 30 days. And that's setting the bar real low. And what angers me is that I don't see Channel 4 here when these illustrious young men and women were here looking real good in their uniform and communicating with us. And I'm kind of putting the blame on the St. Louis Public Schools. Don't let them come in and highlight the negative. If Channel 4 wants to talk about the St. Louis Public School kids, they should have had their butts here with their cameras on this crowd and this community here trying to get something done with the St. Louis Public Schools. So we gotta shy away from that, and let's highlight our children's progress and the things that are positive for our children. And I hesitated to say it because I didn't want to blast. I think this brother who brought these kids here are doing a good job. And I'm a former St. Louis police officer, and I know these streets. Our children are beset by crime, violence, poverty, education deficits, and we must address what's going on in these streets. And the key and the solution is not bringing in the damn National Guard or the state highway police to cordon off the black neighborhoods and stop cars and check cars. That's not what we need. We need investment in our community. We need banks and investment to invest in North St. Louis as it falls down. So unless we support our communities, we got nothing. And I'm against these, they got to stop the violence where we invite out-of-state hustlers coming into our city. We got the solution right here. And if we don't start and invest in our schools and invest in programs for our children and make these high schools interesting and bring back skills, curriculum-based skills, and teach our young people to go out and become employable and build their own businesses, we are failing our children. And that's why this hell is going on in the streets. And the key lies right here, not in the mayor's office. They don't know what the hell's going on. It lies right here with education, skills, and job training.
Mr. Monroe, that's your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Karen Kaysen?
First of all, I would like to say good evening. And I want to say that I am so glad that the district has implemented the Climate and Culture Survey. Morale in this district, especially central office, is so low you can basically step on it. Some loyal, dedicated, and highly proficient staff have been bullied, harassed, and intimidated by their vindictive, unprofessional, and insufficient superiors. I'm truly glad that a third party, Panorama, is in charge of the reporting of the results of the survey. Staff needs to be assured that St. Louis Public Schools HR office is not privy to the results of the survey and that the responses are kept in anonymity. Many St. Louis Public Schools employees are apprehensive about filling out the survey for fear of repercussions from the district's HR department and other staff because they've been bullied, harassed, and terminated for speaking their minds and telling their truths. HR staff and a few other district departments are known for violating the rights and lying on the employees. When the reminder of the survey came on district email last week, it had Mr. Burton and Anna Westland on the reminder. It scared a lot of people. Somehow an email needs to go out assuring employees to freely fill out the survey without fear of repercussion or retaliation.
Monty Hill.
Hi, my name is Monty Hill. I'm a power builder, and I'm here to request that you put Better Budgets, Better Schools on the agenda for the campaign. We have a campaign that was started in 2018 with 16 women, all residents of North City, St. Louis. St. Louis Public Schools struggles to adequately distribute resources to support largely low-income students' populations. While there is an ultimate and urgent need to increase the amount of funding distributed towards low-income students in St. Louis Public Schools, currently there is no clear, transparent, or detailed system in place to provide that understanding for all revenue sources and funding allocations. Based off the responses that we got from the community members, we received over 100 talks to, sorry about that. We received over 100 comments from community members in North City. We also made phone banking calls to over 10,000 residents in North City. And part of the policy demands is that we effectively communicate with community. That means distribute paper and electronic communication to all schools, staff, faculty, and families about all budget meetings and decisions. 2, we wanted promotion of community input. That means host 4 community meetings per year to gather public input on key decisions and upcoming school year's budget. 3, we wanted to advance the data of transparency online, which means not online, but just transparency. It means to release paper or electronic reports and dashboards that illustrate district-wide and school-specific budget sources, allocations, goals, and strategic priorities. Again, we received over 100 responses from the community, but also 700 letters came in electronically throughout events and also door knocking. And Mrs. Rhodey Collins, I just have a gift for you. These are the letters that we received. Well, my time's up. And again, everybody that's stands with We Power and Power Builders, and we just want to support and again be on the budget, be on the agenda for St. Louis Public Schools for the next meeting.
Thomasina Clark.
Members of St. Louis Board of Education and Dr. Adams, we do want to acknowledge that you have been making improvements since the launch of this campaign. The most recent budget book has improved significantly. It is much more appealing, it's much more reader-friendly, and it provides more context in an accessible manner. Thank you. We do want to acknowledge that you have planned and are currently hosting 4 community forums. Thank you. We do want to acknowledge that you now mention in the budget book that you received grant funding. Thank you. Yet, this does not change our urgent need for you to formally adopt our policy demands so that these are long-term practices. And yes, there have been improvements, but we can and must do better. We want to see an interactive dashboard broken down by each school. Revenue sources in detail. For instance, how much is being received in Title I? How much is being received in grants? How much is being received from Prop 1 as far as expenses? How much are you spending on literacy? How much are you spending on restorative justice? How much are you spending on arts and education? If you say your goal is to create a system of excellent schools, how much money is truly being spent to create a system of excellent schools? If you say your goal is to advance fairness and equity across the schools, how much are you spending and how are you spending money to achieve that goal? There are school systems across the country that are doing this, and they are doing it well. Nothing is stopping us here at SLPS. St. Louis Board of Education members, we need you to adopt these policy demands by your next board meeting. We will be available to answer any questions about these policies and draft the resolution leading up to the next board meeting. Thank you. Again, my name is Thomasina Clark, a retired educator, very proud to have worked with St. Louis Public Schools, and a member of We Power.
Gloria Nolan.
Good evening. 4 board members supported all 3 of our demands while campaigning. 4 board members agreed to make the budget transparent for families and students in SLPS while campaigning. Who are the 4? Adam Lane, Donna Jones, Dr. Joyce Roberts, and Tracy Miller. And while some of the board members have been supporting us and advocating for these demands once they got elected, there still needs to be some support in public. However, Tracy Miller has been blocking these policies for changes for our children since elected. Tracy Miller agreed when it was time for her to get up in her seat, but her support has grown cold. Tracy Miller used our votes to warm her seat, but she's gone cold to the people. All of the parents, students, educators, and taxpayers. She's gone cold on over 700 members of the community. Tracy Miller and the rest of the fabulous 4, please follow through and support the demands. I'm going to yield the rest of my time to Tracy Miller herself.
The board does not respond to public comment, so you cannot yield.
I'm going to yield my time to Tracy Miller herself.
Think about and talk through what it looks like, not just what it is. Aside on, I think I want to take it a step further, only because I've seen policies be put in place and then not carried out on. And so not only do we need to distribute information, but we need to distribute it in a way that it's understandable and easy to digest for communities. And we need to actively promote that within the communities that we're serving, because not everybody's going to go out and search for that. To explain about having it be hard to find budget information, FOIA requests, if you ever want to know something, those are fun. So go ahead and look at those if you want to see who is getting raises while teacher salaries were increased. But anyway, I also want to say that making sure that we have public input in these decisions. So like 4 meetings a year is great, and I think it's a great place to start. But making sure that those meetings are accessible is also something that we need to make sure that we're doing. So it's one thing to say that we are signing on to have 4 meetings a year. It's another thing to say that we are going to promote those meetings. We're going to activate the community to be involved, and we're going to make sure that those meetings are at times that are accessible to people and that they are like publicly open so that people know that they're happening. So I support this and I signed on, but I just want to be clear that
I agree with Tracy. Thank you.
Davies McDaniel. Davies McDaniel.
I think I put my name on there.
Are you Davies McDaniel?
Yes, I am. Wow. I just thought this was for signing up, but what I will say, as a young black man from the projects, I came a mighty long way as far as education is concerned. I got my GED. By the grace of God, I'll be graduating in May to become a teacher. And as I'm sitting here, I'm just in I'm in awe, like I'm in awe. It's kind of like overwhelming because I wasn't, I was signing up thinking that's what we all had to do. But anyway, like I said, as a father, as a parent, I really think that we really have to put where our hearts are into education, because at one time I was a young man in the streets, and my motto was high till I die. But now I'm an older gentleman, due to graduate, and I really think that education is key. So that's all I have to say.
Tyrell Manning? Is there a Tyrell Manning?
Good evening, Board and Dr. Adams. My name is Tyrell Manning. I'm a community advocate and fellow We Power. I'm a little taller than everybody. I'm basically, again, here to ask that you all make the annual district-wide budgeting process more transparent with greater community input. In the long run, this will increase accountability and create a path towards funding allocations that truly support schools and the students. I believe that we're all here for the students with the greatest demonstrated need. Over the last 3 years, St. Louis Public School District has spent over $1 billion, and the quality of our student education is not improving at the rate it should. The literacy rate in our district is under 25%. We are failing our students by not tracking spending. Where is the money? Show us the budget. St. Louis Public School Board, we ask that you adopt these policy demands by your next board meeting. We'll be available to answer any questions about these policies and help you draft the resolution leading up to the next board meeting. Thank you.
I'm having trouble with the first name, but the last name is Hampton, possibly Jackson Hampton. The handwriting's a little blurry.
Good evening, Board and Dr. Adams. My name is Jatan Hampton. I'm here to ask that you make the annual district-wide budgeting process more transparent with greater community input. In the long run, this will increase accountability and create a path towards funding allocations that truly support school and students with the greatest demonstrated needed. Over the last 3 years, St. Louis Public School has spent over $1 billion, and the quality of our students' education is not improving at the rate it should be. The literacy rate in our district is under 25%. We are failing our students by not tracking spending. Where is the money going? Show us the budget. St. Louis Board of Education, we need you to adopt this policy demand by your next board meeting. We will be available to answer any questions about these policies and draft the resolution leading up to the next board meeting. Thank you so much.
C. Jackson.
Hello. I want to address bullying. Bullying comes in different forms: intimidation, embarrassment, taunting, name calling, and all forms of verbal, physical, and social bullying. These children has endured a daily basis and is extremely traumatic to a growing child. Bullying is widely problematic at this school and needs to be addressed rapidly. I will not accept my son coming home with another bruise or black eye and no report of how it had happened and what was done about this dispute. There are workshops on handling trauma at home. There needs to be a workshop implemented with trauma at school, because it does exist. What I as a parent and we as a community do not want is for this generation to become uninterested in school or become depressed. The last thing I want for my child or anyone else's child is to cause harm to themselves because of this. No matter how much a child is uplifted at home, being antagonized on a daily basis is not accurate, nor should it be tolerated. It was brought to my attention. It was brought to myself and another parent by a parent educator. And I quote, "Why don't you remove the kids from here since they have so many issues?" Well, I plan not only to remove my family from the school, but from the SLPS district in its entirety. This is not a healthy or stable learning environment for my children. Someone has to take stand. Please take this in consideration.
M. Roy. The next name is M. Roy.
I'm taking her side
We
because
don't-
she can't speak. She don't have no voice.
She has laryngitis.
I lost my voice, so she's supposed to be. This is dealing with school communication or lack thereof. SLPS strives on parent involvement. With that being encouraged, it is outlandish that parents that are involved are said to be harassing the teachers by sending emails or other correspondence when addressing issues that transpire while at school. Emails are going weeks and months without response, then teachers or staff because of this defraying the children. Past issues are never rectified because of everything brought to the principal or assistant principal. It is left unresolved. Or on a small meeting is held with false promises, which seems to pacify the situation to appease the parent, hoping the issue is dropped or forgotten parent. I want to address the word offender. Offender by definition is a person who commits an illegal act, criminal, wrongdoer, evil. Why is this word used so loosely when speaking about our minority children at this elementary school? And how does two students arguing back and forth constitute one being called an offender? I'm done.
Arthurine Harris.
Greetings, Dorothy Rose Collins, Dr. Adams, Dr. Joyce Roberts, Adam Lane, Tracy Miller, Natalie Vowell, Donna and Susan Jones. I know one of which is not here. My name is Arthurine Harris. I live in Hamilton Heights, and I am a community advocate and power builder with We Power. I'm here to implore you to make the annual district-wide budgeting process more transparent with more community input. Over the last 3 years, SLPS has spent over $1 billion, and the quality of our students' education has not improved at the rate that it should. The literacy rate for our district is under 25%. To put this in perspective, if SLPS were a country, its literacy rates will be on par, well, just above that of the sub-Saharan country of Niger, which has a literacy rate of 19%, and it's the lowest in the world. It is well documented that literacy is crucial to the economic development of not only a country, but a state, a city, and a society. How can we stand here today and look these kids who were here in their eyes, knowing that we are failing them? Let that sink in. Where is the money going? We need to see the budget. We demand to see the budget. St. Louis Board of Education, we implore you to adopt these policy demands by your next board meeting. Thank you.
Jacqueline Randall.
Good evening. Your name, because we can't hear it. Pardon? She calls your name while they're clapping.
Oh, well, thank you. Good evening. My name is Jacqueline Randall. I'm an educator, I'm a parent, and I'm a member of We Power. To reinstate what we've been saying over the last 3 years, SLPS has spent over $1 billion. $1 billion can get you the Marlins at this point. You can buy an MLB team with that. We need to know where this money is going. without clarity of where the budget is going and where it is spent, we have the low literacy rates that was just mentioned. Where's the money going? Show us the budget. St. Louis Board of Education, we need you to adopt these policies, demands by your next board meeting.
Darius Rucker. Darius Rucker.
Took my time a little bit because this process has been taking time. It's been over a year. Whew. Good evening, Board of Education and Dr. Adams. My name is Darius Rucker. I'm an educator. I live in the 63107 zip code, and I'm a PAL builder with WePower. I am here to ask that you make the annual district-wide budgeting process more transparent with greater community input. Over the last 3 years, SLPS has spent how much, y'all? Over $1 billion, and the quality of our student education is not improving at the rate that it should. Where is the money? Show us the budget. St. Louis Board of Education, we need you to adopt these policy demands by your next board meeting. Let us know if you have questions.
Jesse Wilcox.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jessie Wilcox, and I'm a power builder and a community member. I live in the West End. I'm here to ask the St. Louis Public School Board to make the annual district-wide budgeting process more transparent with greater community input. Over the last 3 years, SLPS has spent over $1 billion, we all got it now, right? Over $1 billion, and the quality of our student education is not improving at the rate that it should. The literacy rate in our district is under 25%. We are failing our students by not tracking spending. Since the board can't respond, I'm asking the community, do any of y'all know where the money's going? No, nobody, you know where the money's going? Okay, but, so, on the 1, 2, 3, ooh, she said they need to tell us. So on the count of 3, can I get a collective? Show us the budget. 1, 2, 3. Show us the budget. We'd appreciate it. So Kelvin Adams, Dr. Roberts, Donna Jones, Adam Lane, Tracy Miller, Dorothy Rhodey Collins, Natalie Val, Susan Jones. I'm asking all of you, we need you. We need you to adopt these policy demands by your next school board meeting.
Stanley Goodwin. Stanley Goodwin.
My name is Stanley Goodwin, a lifelong resident of St. Louis, a product of the St. Louis public school system. I'd like to know, why is it when I came out of Northwest High School in 1968, it was the second smallest school with 1,800 students. Now, that same school only have a few hundred. Beaumont used to have 3,200. O'Fallon Tech had over 3,000. Roosevelt over 3,000, etc., etc. But now these buildings are open with only a few hundred students. There is not one solvent business in this country that would allow this to happen. If you have a school like the Sumner High School with only 200-something students, that is built for 2,400. It costs an arm and a leg for the air conditioning, the heating, all of the amenities to keep that place open. Now, because of Sumner's history, I wouldn't close it. I would close the building, but just put that name on another institution. Secondly, I did teach algebra about 10, 11 years ago, and I was shocked. When I was trying to teach the slope and y-intercept, I did step by step because I assumed they didn't know. Found out a lot of the kids could not read. Now you're in high school and you can't read, there's a problem. If you can't read by the 2nd grade, the school should be with the parents and let's do something about it. And I always, throughout every grade I was in, I always had at least 4 or 5 people in my class that were 2 years older than me. Why? Because they had flunked, some of them repeatedly. But we were not, the St. Louis public school system did not pass you on if you were not ready for the next grade. Now, unless we get back to something like that, we're gonna still keep on passing people that do not have marketable skills. And another thing, when I was in high school, there's a place called Opportunity High School. You act a fool in Northwest, we suspend you, you go to Beaumont. You act a fool at Beaumont, now you go on to Opportunity High. You act a fool there, on the day you turn 16, you're gone. My kids don't have, my kids should not have to put up with kids that don't know how to act, and so the teacher's spending 20, 30 minutes, sit down, shut up, etc., etc. Kids that don't want to be, don't want to get with the program should not prevent other students that do from learning. Now, I really implore you, now we voted for you all, you need to do something about that, and you have the perfect person. Dr. Joyce Roberts, years ago, turned Laclede around because she got the parents together to buy into the system. We're going to make this successful for these children, and it worked. So I don't know what's being done now, but I demand it. I have grandchildren in school now. I don't want to leave them, you know.
Your time. Manuela Murray.
I must say, I didn't expect this. This meeting has put me in an emotional state. I don't even want to read what I came here for, but I'm going to. And I know I'm on a timer, but you're going to hear what I got to say. Good evening. My name is Manuela Murray, and I am a product of the St. Louis Public Schools. I said to myself, I need to say this. I said to myself, self, what do you say to a room full of people with initials behind their name? And the Creator reminded me, Manuela, you have some as well. CM, CS, and LE. And as I thought about it, I said to the Creator, oh my, I know what that means. Concerned mother, common sense, and life experience. It doesn't take a degree to speak from that. So I stand here today before you now. When you have a parent come to you, I would like to suggest that you make some time to listen. It may lead to some great ideas to help a community you serve. I have on a few occasions saying I will not give up on this district, but I must say it has been a great challenge for me. I have asked, requested, practically poured all my energy in working with the staff to help my son and children like him, and all I get is at the start of everyone on board. As time go by, people are not keeping to the commitment they made with me. What does that show my son and others like him? Well, in my own words, that they are trifling. Using that word in its true meaning, to me, they are important. I have had meetings with you, and you treat me as if I'm not in the room. Trifling. When are you going to have teachers committed to noticing and offering better assistance to students that are failing before grades come out or worsen? I ask of you again this day, help me and my son and others like him more.
That's time. Jennifer Boudreau.
You know what? I'm going to read the rest of this, Dr. Adams, because you all need to hear this. I heard that, and I'm almost done. Just give it.
Ms. Murray, there are lots of other people that we want to hear from
I know that, but I'm going to finish this.
Ms. Murray, that's time. Jennifer Boudreau.
You know what?
That's what you got to say.
I'm going to. I am a person who is often in the school having meetings with my teachers
Ms. Murray,
and
that's
staff.
your time.
Still, he ended up with an F. last quarter, and weeks after that, talking to teachers. I talk to teachers, I have meetings with them. No one is listening, just like you trying not to now. You all are not fair to us. You need to do better.
Jennifer Boudreau.
This district used to be way better than it is now. It sucks. You need to do better. Come on, y'all need to do better by us. You we're a community that you serve.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Boudreau. I'm a parent, and I'm also here in support of WePower. I come as a parent feeling like we've heard the voices of parents here tonight. We know how much energy and passion parents have for their children and for their children's education. And I think you see here tonight how it has been organized and consolidated and the power that that gives to the community. A lot of times I think in a big bureaucratic institution like St. Louis Public Schools, a parent can just feel lost and like their voice is not heard. And that's one of your largest untapped resources in the St. Louis Public School District is these concerned parents who would do anything to get their children ahead and to support their communities. And that's all I have to say.
Imani?
Hello, my name is Imani. I am with WePower. I'm from North St. Louis, and we want to know where the money is going. And the reason I want to know where the money is going, because you heard these children from some that come up here, and one of them said two of her siblings have been murdered, and you cut the budget with counselors when we the #1 murder capital in the country. We have all these students in our community traumatized, and we need more counselors in the school, not less counselors in the school. So that's why we need the budget. I want to know why these kids up here, Sumner High School football team was cut. Because when you cut football, you cut scholarships. When Clayton over there, they got all kind of band and everything, and then you cutting the budget. I want to know where the money is going, because see, this budget being cut and all these services being cut out of our schools is costing our kids not to go to college. So we need to know where this money is going for a reason. We just not standing up here because we got something to show y'all, and we gonna show it to you. And if you don't give us what we want, you're gonna look for something else to come through here pretty soon.
Jennifer Putnam.
Good evening, my name is Jennifer Putnam. I'm a proud graduate of St. Louis Public Schools, Classical Junior Academy and Metro. I'm also the parent of 2 current students at Kennard Classical Junior Academy. As the board and Dr. Adams know very well, the school, one of the top rated schools in the area, is still named after a lifelong member of the Confederacy. This is unacceptable. I think everyone in this room would agree that it is unacceptable. Then why has nothing been done? A parent-led effort to change the name has been going on for years. A petition to change the name to honor a visionary St. Louis Public School teacher, educator, Betty Wheeler, was formed, and over 1,000 people signed the petition. The school community voted overwhelmingly to change the name of the school. The Kennard name needs to go. Last year, Dr. Adams proposed looking into the names of all of the schools and having town halls. That sounds great, but there's no need to delay the change of the name Kennard. The time is now. It's gone on too long. I urge you to vote on this at the next board meeting.
Wally Amusa. Wally Amusa.
Good evening. My name is Wale Musa. I have a 40-year-long relationship with the St. Louis Public Schools. Used to represent teachers, used to lobby for the district. All my 5 children went through St. Louis Public Schools. And I think I can say I think I know what makes a successful school in this district. 2 months ago or so, I spoke here. I was very angry because of some things that happened at one of the high schools, specifically STEM High School Gateway. And I want to express a note of gratitude that Superintendent Adams followed up on that issue, intervened, participated in a meeting that should never have actually involved him. And I want to thank him publicly, because sometimes we don't always thank those people who take that extra step to get us some kind of results. But what happened at Gateway is indicative of the fact that we have a bigger problem. When you have schools where you have 1,000 students or more, and you have a PTO or organization meeting, and only 3 parents show up, we got a problem. We got a systemic problem. Successful schools have a minimum of 30% parental engagement and participation for those schools to be successful. So I'm here today to kind of, on the one hand, offer kind of a new beginning, because we have a lot of very good people in this district. Got a lot of very good parents in this district. We got a lot of very good children in this district. Got a lot of very good teachers in this district. What has been lacking is what I call a non-antagonistic collaborative process, which is needed for education to succeed for everybody. So I want to thank the We Power people for pushing for transparency. We should never demonize any parent that shows up to push for transparency, because when the people are united and they work together, we make progress. A lot of our children that are being killed.
That's your time.
Thank
Irma
you.
Nevels McNeil.
Hello, President Rhodes Collins. My name is Irma Nevels McNeil. I am Missouri Retired Teachers Vice President for Region 14. There's about 28,000 of us retired teachers, and I'm also a retiree of the St. Louis Public School System. I am so glad that this board is sitting here. My question is this. I didn't give you my address on that sheet because there was a spot, but I do have a card to give you. I have a question I need to have answered. The previous board, the state appointed board, there was a lawsuit started by the public school retirement system of the city of St. Louis. My question is this. Since the elected board has taken office, does that lawsuit go to you, or is it still for the state of Missouri, since it's by the state appointed? I want to know, does this elected city board have that jurisdiction of the lawsuit between the pension board? And that's my question. And that's what I'd like to have. I have cards to give you. Now, since I've been sitting here also, I did have an opportunity to visit Beaumont, and I was impressed with the program that is there, the technical education. The culinary arts was good, and the cosmetology, the health occupation therapy. I was wondering why couldn't that program be fully developed? Because right now, in this time and age, the arts are not, the jobs are not there, but they are there in technical, and their buildings seem to be, there. So maybe that you could give that a thought. And I'm glad that you are in office, and I understand you inherit a lot of things. Thank you.
Loren Patton.
say hi to everyone. I am a part of We Power, but more than that, I am a professional, walking, talking, educational advocate for students, community, and their parents. So I like for you all to focus on just 2 words. One being professional, and the second being responsible. So if you would tap on yourself, just like so, touch yourself. As an adult, are you a responsible individual? You can answer silently to yourself. As a adult in your profession, are you a professional individual? You can decide that on yourself through your behavior, your action, and your attitudes. Now, we deem it necessary for the students and their families, their parents, their guardians, their achievement and their success. I am a product of St. Louis Public Schools. Not to mention, I still reside in the city of St. Louis. Now, we like to hold you guys true to being responsible and being professional. As a part of the We Power, where is the money? Audience.
Show us the budget.
More than that, deem it necessary for a good night rest, to be professional and to be responsible as adults. Thank you.
That concludes public comment. Moving on to our agenda, is there a motion to approve the July 9th, 2019 regular meeting minutes? Anyone?
I move that we approve the July 9th, 2019 regular business meeting minutes.
Second. Any discussion on those minutes? We will vote.
Ms. Steve Jones,
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones is absent. Mr. Lane,
Yes.
Ms. Miller.
Yes.
Dr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mrs. Fowl,
Yes.
Mrs. Brody Collins.
Yes.
Motion has passed.
Is there a motion to approve the July 13th, 2019 governance retreat minutes?
I move that we pass the July 13th, 2019 government retreat minutes.
Second. Any discussion?
Point. The governance retreat meeting on July the 13th, as well as the one on July the 23rd, were both managed, and we agreed to some points that were identified on the district scorecard, which are not governance items, and so I wanted to point that out.
Any other discussion? Ms. Lewis?
Ms. D. Jones.
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones is absent. Mr. Lane.
Yes.
Ms. Miller.
Yes.
Dr. Roberts.
No.
Mrs. Fowl.
Yes.
Mrs. Brody Collins.
Yes.
The motion is passed.
Is there a motion to approve the July 23rd, 2019 special work session minutes?
I move that we approve the July 23rd special work session minutes.
Second. Any discussion? Ms. Lewis?
Ms. D. Jones.
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones is absent. Mr. Lane.
Yes.
Ms. Miller.
Yes.
Dr. Roberts.
No.
Mrs. Fowl.
Yes.
Mrs. Brody Collins.
Yes.
The motion has passed.
Dr. Evans?
Good afternoon. First and foremost, I'd like to remind everyone in attendance of a few important dates coming up for staff and families. Parent-teacher conferences will take place on Tuesday, October the 15th and Wednesday, October the 16th. Before or after school, please check with your school to identify what time it may be. Times by school can be accessed by the homepage of the district website. So you can click on the website and they can tell you what time the meetings will take place. You may also check with your child's school for details. We hope to see a lot of parents and guardians at these important meetings to double check to see how students are doing academically and as well as discipline as well. Secondly, the district is holding a series of forums. This will be the second forum to discuss the proposed 2020-21 school year budget. Staff, family, and community partners are encouraged to come out and share feedback and recommendations. There is also a Q&A at each forum, which means that administration, the board has also been represented at these meetings as well to give any kind of feedback relative to the budget. The next budget forum is right here in this room on Monday, October the 14th, starting at 6 p.m. and we will remain until all questions have been addressed. An additional forum will be held next month, Saturday, November the 2nd in the Vashon High School auditorium starting at 10 a.m. You may also submit questions or feedback at www.slps.org/budget. There will also be a fourth forum that will be held sometimes in January or February to give the board, to give the public the final feedback as it relates to the budget. Friday, October 18th is a professional development day for staff, so school will not be in session on that day. Finally, Monday, November 11th is Veterans Day. The district will be closed and reopen on November 12th, which is also the date of the next November board meeting. The board will also address their work session. I'm sure the board president will cover that in her comments. At this point in time, there are 3 presentations. We'll start with the first presentation, which is an update of the CPN, Mr. Jay Hartman, who is the liaison between the district and the CPN, which is a consortium partnership network that is an innovative approach to looking at 2 very distinct schools, Ashland and Merrimack. I know both principals are here as well tonight, Dr. Bodie, as well as I saw the principal, I don't see him.
Mr. Strong.
Mr. Strong, in the back over to the right. So Mr. Hartman, if you could start with your presentation at this time.
Sir, thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
You need to hit the mic.
Good evening. Thank you guys for having me. We appreciate you taking the time to ask us to present today. As Dr. Adams said, my name is Jay Hartman. I am working with the consortium schools, so that is Ashland Elementary School and Merrimack Elementary School. And I'm excited to share with you some of the things that they've been doing this year that are decidedly different. So I will start by sharing what the goal of the consortium schools is. It is to dramatically improve school performance by providing schools with a new governance model that will enable greater autonomy, more flexibility, as well as intentionally strengthen community voice. So a few things that the schools have been doing this year are outlined here, and I will walk you through each of those. What the teacher leadership structure looks like, what the schools have done around flexible scheduling, different reading curriculum, assessment autonomy, the weekly coaching cycle, as well as what they are doing to intentionally deepen their relationship with community partners. Before diving into that, I want to quickly frame why the CPN exists. As you will see in this chart, it illustrates that over the last 10 years, there has been a significant improvement in a number of SLPS schools, but there is still a subset of schools that are chronically low performing. And so there's a number of people who believe that a fundamentally different approach is needed for these schools, and that is what is being piloted with the consortium schools. So the first element of that pilot is to give more decision-making rights to the teachers at a local school-by-school level. So how that is playing out at Ashland and Merrimack is through what are called teacher leadership teams. The teacher leadership teams at these 2 schools started meeting on a weekly basis in the spring semester, and they've done a number of things, but before I share that, I will just tell you what that consists of because that's a unique structure. The principal and the academic coach sit on the teacher leadership team, as well as either a counselor or school social worker, and then 4 classroom teachers. This group of teachers is the governing body for their school, and they vote on any flexibilities or autonomies that they have as they continue to be district schools. What the leadership team did over that spring semester was they developed a 6, 12, and 3-year school improvement plan with details about academic instruction, school culture, as well as community involvement. For the very first year, both schools decided to have a really clear focus on improving core instruction. They want to be able to build on that foundation in the following years. So, a few things that they did with that goal of improving core instruction. And they took 2 different approaches. At Merrimack, they have decided to departmentalize their math and reading teachers. The reason they're doing this is because it will help take advantage of teachers' instructional strengths. So for instance, the 3rd grade math teacher at Merrimack is really talented, and so instead of just teaching 3rd grade math, she is teaching 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade math this year, and that allows other teachers to specialize in reading and then another teacher to specialize in science. Their goal is to dramatically improve student outcomes by using that level of autonomy. At Ashland, they've taken a decidedly different approach with the same goal. Every day at Ashland, they have what we call instructional hubs for reading and for math. And so when you walk into Ashland at 8:30, every single teacher and student is spending the next 2 hours on their literacy block. That includes support staff too. The nice thing about that is that they are able to dramatically reduce their class size because every single teacher and support staff is involved in this, including the related arts teachers. And so with the smaller class sizes and a rigorous curriculum, their goal is to improve the quality of instruction to improve outcomes for kids. I will say this, is that these are not easy schedules for the principals to be able to execute on. And these are decisions that the teacher leadership teams made, and they're not always the easiest thing for a school administrator to execute, but because it was made with students in mind and made by the teacher leadership teams, we believe that it's going to improve core instruction. As we transition to talking about their curriculum, I want to frame this briefly. Both schools identified a pretty big gap in being able to provide students with high quality on grade level curriculum, especially in reading, each day. This is just a quick snapshot of research that was done by the New Teacher Project. And what it does, very briefly, is says that most students in the schools that they studied are able to complete the assignments that they are given. But most of the assignments they are given are not on grade level. Okay? That's what those two numbers, 71% and 17%, represent. So the teachers and the teacher leadership teams at Ashland and Merrimack actually wanted their first decision to be adopting a new ELA curriculum. And so what they did was they adopted Core Knowledge Language Arts curriculum. This is a unique curriculum that combines two strands of teaching reading, a skills strand and a knowledge strand. This is a research-based and highly adopted curriculum that has proven to be able to improve students' comprehension overall. It's unique because it's not just teaching comprehension skills, but it's teaching knowledge and skills in order to provide a better base of learning for all students in reading. It's very rigorous, and that solves the problem of putting the right materials in front of kids every day. And it's vertically aligned pre-K through 5th grade, which teachers appreciate, as well as the principals. This single decision has really raised the expectations for students in rigorous reading instruction. Another related assessment autonomy that the schools have requested was to adopt a different series of assessments. They identified a gap that at the end of the year they're taking the Missouri MAP test, but there wasn't enough assessments along the way that were aligned to the MAP test. There were a series of other ones that were helpful and useful, but they wanted to be more targeted and specific. And so they are a part of a pilot of other schools within the district that are using Scantron Achievement Series this year instead of Scantron Performance Series. This is going to give teachers an opportunity to get standards-based student-by-student reports that will tell them at what point during the year has a student mastered a given standard, and it will allow them to replan instruction in an effective way and will improve the student outcomes. This is an example of teachers making those decisions and being able to provide a better opportunity for students by investing in their own learning. I think that those two pieces tie together effectively well when you think about how we are developing teachers, and this is another unique piece about Merrimack and Ashland this year, is that they are investing deeply in their own learning as teachers. We identified that they're adopting new curriculum as well as a new assessment cycle, and so one piece that is tying that together is the weekly coaching cycle. So each core content teacher at Ashland and Merrimack gets a one-on-one meeting with their principal or their instructional coach each week. This gives teachers an opportunity to internalize and practice an upcoming lesson and either make it more rigorous or more engaging and ensure that it's aligned to the most difficult things that students need to master. Then their coach goes in and observes that lesson, is able to provide additional feedback, and then they start that cycle over the following week by bringing student work that they were able to execute on with that previous lesson, and then diving into another upcoming lesson. This is an example of the staff at these schools working really collaboratively to develop the skills of teachers and then relentlessly focus on improving student outcomes. Finally, this is not an exhaustive list of all the strategic community partners, but this is a short list at each school because this is a big tenet of providing more community voice at these two neighborhood schools. So this is a short list of what you see at Merrimack and Ashland. You'll see that there's an embedded therapist at Merrimack, small group reading support from a local church, a clothing boutique through the Little Bit Foundation, as well as backpacks provided through Operation Food Search. At Ashland, there's an after-school program provided by the Dream Center. They get equity training and support from Shut It Down with SLU. SLU undergrad students provide weekly tutoring, and they're also developing a new wellness hub through the Little Bit Foundation and the St. Louis Area Food Bank. This is an exciting opportunity for the community and family in the Ashland neighborhood to be able to get fresh vegetables, produce, and groceries free of cost in an area that otherwise doesn't have very many options. Both schools are going to be starting community partner convening meetings each month. That starts later this month. And the goal of that is to bring all of the different partners that support a school together into one room in order to ensure that they're providing the best wraparound services for kids, and also lift up their voices to continue to align to school goals.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Are there any questions for Mr. Hartman at this time? Dr. Roberts?
Thank you, Dr. Adams, and thank you, Mr. Hartman.
Yes, ma'am.
I was in attendance at your October 2nd meeting, and I do have a follow-up question. One regarding, you spoke about the curriculum being successful, and I think I asked you for some data that supported that. You
Yes,
sent
ma'am.
me a link, and I've been unable to access that link to see the comparison data. So if you could forward me that link or another way to get that information.
Certainly, I will. And I will give you a quick summary. The link is to a study done in New York City Public Schools where they adopted this curriculum, and it followed a couple of groups, one that adopted the curriculum and one that didn't. And the groups that adopted the curriculum did significantly better over a 3-year span. So, but I will certainly follow up with you. Thank you.
We'll get you a hard copy, Dr. Roberts. Any other questions, Mrs. Jones?
Yes, I would like for you to explain the difference to the audience between your governance body and the one that St. Louis Public School has. How is yours different than ours?
I'll address that if you don't mind,
All right.
Ms. Jones. As you know, at the end of the 2018-2019 school year, the SAB, Special Administrative Board, did a 3-year memorandum of understanding with the CPN Board. The CPN Board is made up of 5 members, one person from the parent body for one of the 2 schools. In this case, that person is from Ashland, as a parent from Ashland. There's a university professor, I think she's here tonight, Dr. Priscilla Dowden-White is here tonight, a representative from appointed by the mayor's office, and Mr. Marcus Robertson, who was appointed by the Alderman office, and Mr. Marcus Robertson appointed by the mayor's office. And then a member of this board serves on that body, in this case, Mrs. Susan Jones, and I serve on the body. So that 5-member board gives the autonomy for these 2 schools to have flexibility and allow teacher voice. All funding comes from this body that's sitting here now, the elected board. All dollars flow through the elected board in terms of supporting teacher salaries and all of the benefits. What we are giving is teacher voice much more than anything else, that they have the flexibility to make independent decisions from this particular body, but this body has to authorize all of the funding that goes to support the CPN. So there is an intermediate body, if you would want to call it that, that really makes the decisions around the day-to-day action that takes place at this school. But this body is the funding arm for the CPN. And all of the employees are still 100% employees of the district with the exception of Mr. Hallman.
All right, thank
It
you.
gives them some flexibility. This is a model that is coming out of Massachusetts and some other places as well. The whole intention here is to give some flexibility, but still tethering this particular entity, meaning the two schools, to the district 100%.
Mr. Hartman, when you look at the budgets of these two schools, pre and post CPN, what would you say are the market differences of the two budgets, both theoretically, so the development and thought that went into strategic planning for the schools, and then also just in terms of programmatic aspects and operations?
So I'll probably cover the budget piece because I'm much more familiar with that. Mr. Hallman came on much after that point in time. I'll let you deal with the programmatic pieces and I'll come back to the budget piece if that's okay, Mr. Lane.
Sure. So you're asking about what the differences are before and after?
Both in the thinking behind
Yeah.
creating the budget for the schools, what you were going to fund, what autonomy, what is the cost of autonomy essentially, and then what those additional programs. I know some of them are going to be through MOUs or free services, but there are things that are paid for that I assume were directed by the principals and the teachers and saying this is what we want to focus our monies on. So I'm just asking insight into that process.
Sure. I think that I'd answer that. The two biggest decision-making processes that the teacher leadership teams and the administration have made is around how to empower their teachers to become more effective. And so one of the ways that they did that was they are providing extra service pay over the summer for additional professional development. They've been adopting new curriculum, and so they wanted to make sure that the teachers were getting more time to spend digging into the curriculum and learning it. So that's one example of how a budget decision was made, but it's geared towards building up human capital. Another way to answer that question is through how they're spending their time, their precious time, in developing teachers during a given school day or given week. Obviously, there's a limited amount of time that teachers have on their planning periods or their prep periods, and so instead of always having a group meeting, they're trying to do more of these one-on-one development. In the long run, that is going to require more outside training, whether it's attending conferences or opportunities to develop the leadership, the instructional coach and the principals, and so that comes at a cost. But I think they're all geared towards building up human capacity.
From a budget perspective, Mr. Lang, the budget is exactly the same as the general operating budget. The difference for these two schools, quite frankly, has been the additional comprehensive dollars that have come as a result of the school being identified by the state. And so some 16 schools receive additional comprehensive dollars. And so they're leveraging their comprehensive dollars, their title dollars, and their general operating budget dollars to address the additional flexibilities that they are purchasing. The only thing different around that piece is that this board, as a matter of fact, approved the curriculum and paid for the curriculum. That is separate and apart, but they're not using the district curriculum. They're not paying for the curriculum that the district would normally be purchasing for them. They're using a different curriculum, and the same GOB dollars that would have aligned to that particular school are being used independently for the curriculum that they're purchasing. But all other dollars are coming through the district funding stream. There has been a philanthropic gift that has been provided for year one. A lot of those dollars were used for planning. Some of it was used for Mr. Hoffman's salary, for insurances that the board needed to have. And we could give you a breakdown of all of those dollars and how those dollars have been used as well. I think the total amount is about $400,000. Hearing no other questions, we thank you, Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. The second presentation tonight is a presentation from Mr. Casey, and I think the team will give some update regarding lead. As somebody may know or may not know, several years ago, I think the actual number is 2 years ago, we did an extensive study of all of our schools, testing the water fountains, and all of our drinking, any place that water was being used. What we committed to is to come back to the board in 2 years to give you an update relative to that, and Mr. Casey will provide this board an update at this point in time. Mr. Casey and Mr. Watson.
Yes, good evening. Also would like to introduce Mr. Squire Watson, who's the interim building commissioner,
Mr. Jeffrey Faust, who's the principal of environmental consultant, and also Mr. Tony Haggerty, who's the co-owner of Impact, one of our minority contractors that helped us with our water testing. Next, please. In response to the national events and increased awareness, St. Louis Public Schools in March of 2016 decided and authorized environmental consultant to test all of our water sources within the district. Sampling was performed by trained and licensed personnel in accordance with federal, state, and local regulations. The environmental consultant is licensed by the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services as a lead abatement contractor authorized to perform water testing and has been with the district, helping the district with its hazmat concerns since 2007. Next, to give a little background, SLPS began remediation of lead-based paint within the schools in 2001, and we have continued to address these lead hazards throughout the district. One thing that we are required is something called child-occupied areas. And child-occupied areas are students under the age of 7, are also part of our district lead abatement program, as they are more susceptible to lead poisoning. The United States Environmental Protection Agency regulates the nation's drinking water and public water supplies under the Safe Drinking Water Act. As a proactive approach to protect students and staff, St. Louis Public Schools in 2016 voluntarily agreed to test drinking water sources at all active schools for lead content. Next, please. A source of potable water. Potable water is the water in which staff and students drink. Within all of our active buildings were sampled for lead. Potential sources include drinking fountains and sinks. Also, sinks associated with kitchens and teachers' lounges also were included in this test. As I stated before, the sampling timeline was prioritized to address children under the age of 7. So our first areas tested were the Parent-Infant Interactive Program, or we call them the PIP programs at Roosevelt, Sumner, and Vashon. The early childhood centers at Sticks and Wilkerson also followed the PIP facilities. And then elementary schools, middle school, and high schools were tested. All samples were collected on what is called a first draw basis. First draw is achieved by allowing the water to rest for at least 6 hours prior to sampling in order to collect any existing debris or settlement within the sample. The intent of this sampling is to replicate worst case scenario conditions. Next, please. After sampling, collections were made. Samples were immediately delivered to Tech Lab. Tech Lab is located in Collinsville, Illinois, following a strict chain of custody procedure. Tech Lab is a National Environmental Laboratory accreditation program and the State of Missouri accredited laboratory, specializing in drinking water analysis. The U.S. EPA action level for drinking water is 15 parts per billion. The USPA document that was titled Lead in Drinking Water at Schools and Child Care Facilities, which was last updated in November of 2015, identifies an action level for drinking water collected from plumbing fixtures as 20 parts per billion. As a precautionary measure to ensure public safety, SLPS has set our internal action level at 10 parts per billion. As you can see, we took it down 10 parts per billion. The stricter action level was set forth as is intended as a screening tool to allow the facilities team under the direction of Mr. Watson to proactively manage water sources within their buildings. We have old buildings, and as corrosion of plumbing lines is an ongoing concern, utilizing this stricter internal action level allows the facilities team to focus on faulty systems before deterioration turns into a major problem. I'd like to give a summary of our results, which we're taking this summer. Again, we have said that water sources in all of our active buildings were tested. The total number of active school buildings, 72 plus 6 administration buildings. The total number of water sources sampled were 1,375. Of that 1,375, 610 were sinks, 765 were drinking fountains. The total number of water sources that failed, that were again over 10 parts per billion, out of the 1,375 was 61. Of the 61, there were 45 sinks that failed and 16 drinking fountains that failed. But I want to take it down a little further, that out of those 61, 34 were sources reported over 20 parts per billion or greater. 27 was reported between 10 parts per billion to 9.9 parts per billion. Next, please. What we have done is breaking the sources into 3 priorities. Priority 1 are sources that came in over 20 parts per billion. What we did, we removed them from service, identified the source of the lead content, made any repairs to those failed systems, and then they were retested prior to use. And then, if they pass, they will be retested annually. Priority 2, any sources over 10 parts per billion to 19.9 parts per billion, they were removed from service. If retested after interventions were done and they were over 10 parts per billion, then we followed priority 1 protocols. Priority 3, any source under 10 parts per billion, we inspect and place on routine preventive maintenance program and retest in 3 years or when conditions change. What we have here is, again, is to show you the results of them. Of the 61 failed sources, they failed in only 33 of our buildings. And these are the 33 buildings, not that right there, but I'll show you. And to give you an example, Beaumont is an example that the water source was a fountain outside room 313. The testing took place on July 19th, 2019. The initial draw was 32 parts per billion. When it went through the intervention, it was retested and it came back with 4.0. Subsequently, that passed in the retest. If you can look, we can see at Beaumont, Clyde, you can see the different schools at which we tested the water sources. Could we go to the next slide, please? Again, you can see these additional schools, water sources. You can see the results. You can see one result down in Northwest came in at 4,600 parts per billion. So you can see the range was very wide. But again, once interventions were done, it was retested, it passed retest and put back in service. Again, please. Again, additional examples of the 33 schools and the tests. You can see here that we can tell you exactly what fountain, sink, where it was located, in the cafeteria, in the gym, whatever. Every system in that building was checked and rechecked. Again, next. Again, you can see here that out of the 61, 2 did not repass. At Beaumont, a fountain outside of room 313, a fountain outside of room 217. Again, when the results came in, interventions were done. The interventions came back high, and we recommend that we will abandon those systems. Next, please. Just to go over our action plan, to tell you the action plans, what we've done, and what Mr. Watson's team will do. Again, anything that's above 10,000 parts per billion, if additional or alternate source of water was needed while students were in the building, and at this time, the only students who were in the building were in summer school, so a majority of our schools did not have children in the buildings when we were testing this summer. As of today, October 8th, 2019, we have replaced 11 faucets and 1 drinking fountain. 49 water sources just needed to be flushed out. What I mean by that, you just let the water run. We all should, when we turn on our water at home, we should let it run for a while anyway, just so that we can get any settlements in. So that's, in some sources, if the waters are not used over a long period of time, settlement can settle in the system. Out of those 61 failed water sources, repairs were made to 59 sources. Once repairs were made by Mr. Watkins and his team, and also from our environmental consultants, they were retested and returned to service. As I said previously, only 2 drinking fountains that located at Beaumont High did not pass on retesting, and we have removed them from service. In conclusion, 2016 was the first year we conducted lead water testing. As a result of that test, we had 88 water sources to fail, requiring them to be retested every year. In 2019, during our 3-year inspection of the building, we had 61 failed water sources, as I said. Out of the 61, only 3 were repeated failures from 2016, the 88. So that shows that the interventions in which we did worked. But again, we had to realize that we have old buildings with old pipes. So we were very happy with the results. We would like to have 0 fail, but at the same time, that also is a good test of what we did in 2016. We corrected those, and then we only had 3 that failed in 2016. And those were 2 sinks at Roosevelt. They were repaired, retested, and they passed. And then we had 1 water fountain at Beaumont that we just abandoned. And abandoned means that we would probably have to go up into the walls and tear all the pipes all the way back to the entry point to get some of these pipes. So the cost would be somewhat prohibitive. So therefore, in some cases, we choose abandonment. At this time, we're available for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Casey at this time?
Mr. Casey, thank you. My question is about the water sources that you indicated needed to be flushed out. Is that something that regular use during the school year takes care of, or does it need additional kind of awareness in order for the water to be at the appropriate levels?
What we've done, we have put interventions in by our staff and whatever to periodically, we go to all of our systems and run them. It's mainly we do it after a long weekend or a long holiday or over winter break, because then our systems are setting for 5, 6, 7 days. And so the staff goes around and actually turn on the systems and let them run for about 2 minutes.
So do they do that for only the water sources that have been troublesome in the past, or do they just do that for all of them after
all water
a long?
sources.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Jones, I think Ms. Jones has a question.
Yes, I guess my question is about all the schools that you identified. I know it's really hard to just really get rid of lead because the schools are so old and most of the pipes that might be a problem are located in the street. So in order to get rid of the problem totally, you would have to dig the pipes up from the street, from the source, correct?
Hi, good evening. Jeff Faust with Environmental Consultants. The very first thing we do is we look at the water supply that we receive from the city of St. Louis itself. And what we know is that that water supply has to be, by federal law, under the Safe Drinking Water Act of 1974, it has to be under 15 parts per billion. In the city of St. Louis, we actually have very good water in the municipality itself. And most of the test results done by the city are less than 5 parts per billion. So in other words, we know that we're generally speaking getting pretty good water from the city itself. However, lead can be present in the fixtures themselves, like the actual drinking fountains. It can be in the joints and T's and valves of the plumbing. It can be in the lines that are in our building, or ultimately it could be out in the street, as you would suggest. Absolutely.
So what were the recommendations for the students and the staff? Because I know once you get even small amounts of lead in the body, that it can last up to 30 years. I used to teach lead. And so if you're low on calcium or what have you, then it would seep back out into the bloodstream. So Are we giving bottled water to these schools as an alternate, or what else are we doing to help this situation?
Well, everything has been remediated based upon the requirements that the federal government has for us, and so we only have water bottles, alternate water sources when there is a problem above the 10%, 10 parts per billion status. Outside of that, we don't have any remediation, if you will, to support anything beyond that. If that was the case, we would have to have water bottles for every single school. And at this point in time, if it's above 10%, we don't have any alternate water sources.
Thank you.
And again, we assured that we went with the 10 parts per billion. We were somewhat apprehensive because we only had to go to 20 parts per billion. So we were looking for large numbers, hopefully not for large numbers. So by going 10 parts per billion, our goal is much less than the 20 parts per billion that we could have went to. So that's one intervention that we chose to do, is to go so much lower than what we had to. And hopefully over time, that would have helped our students. Because we know, so I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah. Ms. Robinson, Dr. Robinson?
I don't have a question, Mr. Casey, but I do want to publicly thank you and Dr. Adams for following up on a concern that I had before. It looks really great.
If there are no other questions, thank you, Mr. Casey.
Thank you.
And team. Good afternoon again. I'd like to give the board a final back-to-school update, if you will, relative to numbers, attendance numbers, enrollment numbers, if you will, and also staffing numbers. So I won't belabor the report tonight. HR staffing, enrollment, and portfolio planning and proposed school action. Well, I will need the board's feedback as it relates to the last 3 slides. First of all, the district has hired some 200 and that's the wrong one. I should say 246 teachers. That says 249, but 246 teachers, 22 Teach for America teachers, a total of 268 as opposed to 261. The other numbers are 57 in terms of teachers who resigned, 6 teachers who are retired, and a total separation of 63 as opposed to 59. The numbers here are consistent in terms of vacancies. At this point in time, we have 48 vacancies. I think the last report I provided to you was between 60 and 70. That number was reduced as we targeted our recruitment efforts around hard-to-fill positions, as well as worked with our own Grow Your Own program. But these are the present numbers as it stands as of the 26th. Again, that date is the wrong date as well. September 26th for foreign language teachers, the number should be 029 340 711 1011 and 4, which are the same numbers here, just the date is the wrong date that's listed here in terms of the number of vacancies and the positions that those vacancies are in as of the 26th, not the 9th. Labor relationship, I won't necessarily go over that. Those are the numbers as it relates to grievances and the issues that we have resolved so far this particular session. At this point in time, I'd like to look at the elementary enrollment. If you look at day 4, day 9, day 14, and the 30th day, which is the date of the numbers that we submit to the state, 13,419 in 2017-18, 12,551 in 2018-19, and 12,192. A reduction from last year of 358 and a reduction from the previous year of 868 for a total of 1,227 less students than we had 2 years ago in elementary school. And so you can see that there has been a decline in elementary school numbers, 1,227 over the last 3 years. If you look at the middle school numbers, 3180 in 2017-18, 3265, which is a reduction of 65, addition of 85, and an increase of 172 from that previous year. And so the numbers you see increasing at the middle school level as compared to the elementary level. At the high school level, again, looking at the numbers 5656 in 17-18, 18-19, 5396, which is a reduction of 260, an increase from the previous year for this year of reduction of 111, and a total reduction of 377 from 2 years ago. So the decline in high school numbers, increase in middle school numbers, and then a decline in elementary level numbers. Alternative enrollment, and this is not broken down by grade level. If it was broken down by grade level, it would likely equal or surpass the high school numbers from previous, because most of our students in alternative enrollment are at the high school level. 654, 1718, 518, which was 136 decrease, and 747 at this point in time, the last September 25th date, which was an increase of 229 students in alternative programs, which means that we don't put students out of school. We do our best to leverage and keep students in school. And I can give you some background information why those numbers are high this year as opposed to what they were at this time last year. District enrollment totally, which is the number that is the significant number, 22919 3 years ago, 21730, which was a decline of 1,189, and at this time last year the numbers were 21730, and this year's numbers are 21655. Obviously, we have students who are transitioning every single day. This was a snapshot in time on this particular day, because these are the numbers that we submitted to the state, and so a decline of 75 students from last year. If you look at the September enrollment count through this chart, it's the same exact numbers, but we're showing it through a graphic depiction, if you will, to let you see what the numbers are over a 3-year period of time. This question came up, which was a question relative to enrollment, at least where kids would go. This chart gives you a breakdown. There were approximately 2,581 less students. Again, this is a transit piece, meaning students come in, students come out. We register students. Some students don't show up, and those counted our numbers originally, especially if they were applying for magnet schools. And so you can see that 20% of the students, as we were able to track them, went to charter schools, 527. Outside the city, some 1,054 students left the city, if we were based on our ability to identify where they went. Private and parochial schools, 210, 8%. In district, meaning students moving from one place to another, 79, or some other facility inside the district. And out of state, some 10%, which was 263, and the total numbers are 2,581. 17%, 448 would have been students in homeschooling, dropout, hospital, GED, and night school, as we were able to identify those students. In terms of population and enrollment, should note that in 2008, there were approximately 319 people living in the city of St. Louis. That number, as we're able to track it, is about 308. That's about a 4.8% decline in the number of persons who live in the city of St. Louis, close to 11,000 persons based on our most recent data that we were able to collect. In the St. Louis Public Schools, from 2008 to 2018, a decline of 20.8%. If you count charter schools as well as the district, that percent would have been 6.12%. In 2008, the total population was about 3,504. Total population in charters and the district is 33,240, which means that across the city, the number of students who are participating in public education, that number has declined. Again, there's also a decline, and I don't have it in here, on the number of students who are participating in the VIC program. If you look at the St. Louis Public Schools enrollment compared to charter schools in 2008 to 2018, you can see what the numbers are here using this particular chart. Lastly, I want to spend a little time here to indicate that part of what the administrative team will be doing is looking at the notion of consolidation and transformation, transforming schools. In 2011, the SAB identified 4 factors to determine which schools should be consolidated or transformed. At the elementary level, 75% utilization, middle school 60% utilization, and high school 50% utilization. And it also looked at accreditation. That meant academics, attendance, graduation, college, and career, the age and condition of the building, and also the feeder pattern of citywide developmental plans. The board does not have an actual policy as it relates to consolidation or transformation. It does not exist. So the SAB came up with a policy or a practice, if you will, that you see listed before you. Using this particular diagram, you can see all of those factors encompassed into this PowerPoint slide, not saying the name of the school, but basically giving you some data points. Part of what the intent of the administration is to provide the board with some recommendations, and I'll go through the timeline in a second, but the intent here is to get feedback from the board about any other information that they would like to have prior to a recommendation coming before the board. I just indicated to you the numbers that are aligned to the population declining. In addition to that, the city of St. Louis houses some 21,000, I just told you the numbers, in 72 buildings. If I give you a breakdown in terms of what other districts have in terms of buildings, and I know a gentleman spoke earlier about the population, we have 3 high schools that have less than 200 students. 3 high schools, less than 200 students. We have 14 elementary schools that have less than 200 students. And so part of what the administration will be bringing to this board as a result of looking at our resources is how do we leverage our resources and maximize those resources to support students in our community. One of the things that has to be on the table is this conversation around consolidation, transformation, or i.e. the word that no one likes to listen to, which is school closings. So I think that's part of a conversation that needs to take place. Let me frame for you really quickly just some numbers. If I look at Springfield Public School District, it has 25,000 students in 52 buildings. St. Louis Public Schools has 72 buildings for 21,000 students. Rockwood has 21,000 students with 30 buildings. Kansas City has 20,000 students in 33 buildings. Columbia has 18,000 students in 34 buildings, and I could go on and on and on to talk about the footprint of the city of St. Louis in a number of buildings. And so part of what my responsibility is to bring back to you some recommendations as it relates to consolidations, transformation, and as well as school closures. And what I'm soliciting from the board as early as possible is any other factors that you would like me to consider as we put a plan together. And I've already outlined some that you see listed here. The building utilization, enrollment, academic achievement, the FCAP, which simply means how much money that we put in the building as a result of the recent bond. FCAT says that what's needed to put the building from a poor condition to a good or excellent condition, if that meant if we repaired everything in that particular building. So I just want to paint a picture for the board of what the administration will be bringing before you. If you look at the timeline here, October, November, all relevant data gathered. December, district administration will submit recommendations to the board. So the belief is in December, in open session, a recommendation will be made to the board. In January, school leadership and staff will be engaged for additional data. And at the January meeting, community forum and community feedback solicited as well. Additional community forums to select feedback if needed, and asking the board to make a final decision in February. Why is that an important date? Because contract for administrators have to be provided for staffing as well. And lastly, February and May, obviously, to look at what needs to happen around student placement or anything that's to do with transfer or reassignment. This is an aggressive timeline. If the board is interested in looking at some models, Austin is doing this right now with 12 schools, and obviously it is a process that needs to take place, and we've done this before. When I arrived, there were some 90 school buildings, so some 18 buildings have been consolidated or closed or transformed. We closed 4 buildings and reopened those buildings based on population shifting and changing, so it doesn't mean that the building stays closed or consolidated forever. It means that based on attendance patterns or patterns in the city, some adjustments have to be made. So I know I've given the board a lot. I provided you with a PowerPoint over a week ago, and obviously will solicit any questions between now and the time that we will come to this decision, or we are able to gather any more information. I've made a commitment to the community, and I think I said this to at least one board member. There is an intent to have some 10 to 12 community meetings in the community where these schools are housed to get feedback from the community over the next 2 or 3 months. So this will not be a meeting that will take place at central office, if you will, of Vashon or Cleveland, as we have traditionally done. It is my intent to go into the community and listen to where the community is in terms of the kind of recommendations that might be coming forward in February. Questions that the board might have? Mrs. Miller first.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, or I guess requests for information.
That might be added, yes.
Yeah, so could we get a map, like a sort of location of the buildings that we're considering?
Yes, ma'am.
In addition to that, could we get any information about previous efforts that these schools have made?
Yes, ma'am.
To raise attendance?
Yes, ma'am, we can provide that to you as well.
And then I think I had one other question, but I forget where it was. Well, if possible, it would be great to have information about, I know we're having the community meetings, but if there are specific people who have plans for what to do with those buildings, that would be helpful as well.
Yes, ma'am, that would be under the category of citywide development plans and feeder patterns. We do collect that information. We have met with the LRA and Otis Williams on a regular basis relative to this, so we have really concrete data in terms of what they, based on the number of persons who have requested building permits or renovation permits, so we do gather that information as well. So yes, we can provide that to you as well, very specific to that particular zip code. Ms. Jones?
Maybe this is the same question that she was asking, but it's under performance-based schools. I would like to see the feeder pattern and the citywide development plan.
Yes, ma'am, that's the same question. Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
that is the intent. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And we can give you what we have based on what the city provides to us. And our real estate person, Mr. Walker, is really in tune to what's happening in the community and can give us some information as well.
And can we also have the age and conditions of the buildings?
Yes, ma'am, that is part of the whole
And
plan that
if
you get.
possible, a tour?
Yes, ma'am, that's not a problem at all. They will all be active buildings, and so they're available at any point in time to go in now. Dr. Roberts has made a request to go to some buildings. She visited 3 schools, I think, today, 2 schools. Yesterday. She's scheduled to visit some schools tomorrow and some schools on Friday, so I welcome any board member who wants to go into buildings that they think might be aligned. The board policy requests that you just notify me, I'll let the principal know, and you have free reign to visit.
I would add that some anecdotal data be collected as well. So we talked a little while ago about when we were talking about extending school hours or having schools open later, different programs and students come from different schools. So thinking about what the cultural impact on certain schools would be if there are mergers of schools, if there are transfers to nearby schools that would be comparable for the schools that might be up for discussion. So someone on your staff or team that would be willing to be able to talk to community members, talk to school leaders about what that potential impact would be.
Yes, sir. I think at the elementary level, based on my history, that has not been an issue. It's always been an issue at the high school level. And so right now, if I was making a recommendation to the board, there would be 3 high schools. I was looking at 1 middle school and approximately 10 elementary schools. But to your point, we have some anecdotal information that we can provide as part of our recommendation as well. Yes, ma'am.
I have a lot of questions. Do you have a deadline by which we should submit any further questions?
No. So whenever you get them to me, we will obviously work to get your answers and add them to whatever the recommendation might be. Also, if there's any recommendations around the timeline, if the board doesn't feel comfortable with the timeline, wants to look at accelerating it or pushing it back, I would really hesitate anything beyond February because you'll be approving the budget. All of this addresses the whole notion of will we have full-time social workers or counselors because as dollars are freed up, there's more resources to put into buildings. Right now, we spend about less than, I want to say 1% of our budget on repairs and renovations for buildings. If you know anything about what that means, that's about $3 million. To do that in 72 buildings is incredibly problematic. So when I get requests to get something repaired, it's a matter of, do I repair this or do I repair that? So reducing the footprint, the number of buildings that we have will give us an ability to have more resources for salaries, more resources for materials and supplies, for textbooks. All of those things come as a result of that, where you're not having to put additional dollars in buildings that are underutilized. I know one of the big challenges for the board is what happens to the building. Part of what we will be recommending as well is what could be a future use for the building and how we can work with the community to utilize that building in a strategic kind of way. Similar to what we've done at Langston, didn't work as well at Coke Brilliant, but it worked really well at Langston. That building is in use being used by an outside partner, and it's minimally costing us dollars. Yes, ma'am.
So I know that there's a item on this proposed action sheet for budget, but if you could, I expect there might be some other savings beyond just the budget for that school, so if you could kind of come up with a dollar amount for each school that would be saved in total.
Yes.
And then if there are specific things that those, I mean, I hear you say about social workers and all those things, but if you have specific ideas for savings that might be tied to specific schools, how that may still flow into the community, freeing up that budget, but what would we do with it that may still serve that same similar area, if that makes sense?
It does make sense. So if XYZ school closes, how can those dollars be possibly used to support a community program? Or I hear exactly what you're saying. Okay? And my staff is writing it down because I am not, so I know they're writing it down so I can make sure that I can answer your question. Any other questions? I want to give the board ample time because this is a really important piece and it's one of the biggest decisions the board has to make. Thank you very much.
Moving on to the consent agenda, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda for October?
I move that we approve the October 8th consent agenda.
Can you list the items?
I'm sorry. The items.
Hold on.
Sorry, let me clarify. I move that we approve the October 8th, 2019 consent agenda items 10-08-19-01 through 10-08-19-05.
Is there a second?
Before we proceed with the second. I added, we amended the agenda item to include the establishment of a committee to discuss
You gotta get a second first before the question.
So the agenda that we amended though is the overall agenda, not the consent agenda, so that'll be the new item 10. Is there a second to Ms. Val's motion to approve the consent agenda? Second, any discussion on the consent agenda?
Yes, item 10-08-19-04. So I'd asked Dr. Adams to provide scope of services for Annie's Hope. That's on the agenda, and he did. I don't have a question or reason to not approve this at this time, but I do want to bring a couple of things, and I understand that my experience is not the experience of all people who have dealt with Annie's Hope. But an organization that I work with that served young people did bring in Annie's Hope for Grief Counseling when we lost one of our young people. And really their presentation, I understand a lot of these organizations, they have different representatives who will go and do the counseling. But the representative that we had, and it came to my attention that there are many representatives from this organization that don't really have the cultural competency to deal with all groups. And going to the website, the staff is definitely not representative of the district, and I will say that grief and death don't have color. However, when certain deaths, especially the ones that are affecting a lot of the children in our district, are rooted in racial oppression and systemic factors, I think it does make sense for the district to seek out partners who are well versed in the type of trauma that our students are dealing with and type of grief counseling that our students need. And I especially bring that up because of the public forum that we had way back when, and there were a lot of people who gave public comment and did say that there are resources out there in our community and there are partners that we could work with. So this is just a plea and urge to the district, to you, Dr. Adams, and your staff to actively seek out more culturally competent services when it comes to for grief counseling.
Duly noted. I do not have a problem withdrawing this one and giving us an opportunity to go back and do some due diligence around your concern. I think it's a relevant concern, and I think it's appropriate. And so I don't have a problem asking that the board will withdraw this one, administration will withdraw this one, give us an opportunity to address Mr. Lane's concern. I don't have a problem with that.
So do we need to adjust the motion, or how does this work?
I will clarify that I do not have an issue, because I know that these are in-time services and these are things that we're agreeing to now. And then the process to seek out and find vendors or have an RFP out for vendors is a lengthy process, so I'm just calling it to attention. But I have no problem, if I were to vote on this action item or this consent agenda item separately, I would still vote yes on it. This is just to inform you and your staff.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Any other comments on the consent agenda? Ms. Lewis?
Ms. P. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. S. Jones is absent. Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Ms. Miller? Yes. Dr. Robert?
Yes.
Mrs. Lau?
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey Collins?
Yes.
The motion is passed.
So, moving on, we have Mr. Lane, a resolution to present, I believe.
Yes. Do we have it via PowerPoint, or should I just read it?
So there's no PowerPoint, it's in our board book. It's the back under board reports.
I'll be brief. So in our last meeting, we talked about the opportunity to meet with the Standing Committee at the Board of Aldermen for a joint meeting on Education and Youth Matters. So I sent to the board a list of items that I thought would be important to discuss with the Board of Aldermen. So this is a resolution to incorporate an equitable real property tax assessment. So if you were here last month, or was it last month? Last time we had a meeting, Dr. Banks presented on, and we set the tax rate. It's upwards of $227 million, if my number is correct, somewhere around that number for what we take in, and we get upwards of 90% of that collected. So this is for the board to make a step in terms of, make a step in an equitable direction. So this is recognizing that neighborhoods in St. Louis City have different opportunities for development and different results when it comes to occupancy in different neighborhoods, vacant buildings, etc. So this resolution would be the board supporting some sort of equitable tax assessment, as well as a set of provisions so that we can, one, encourage more development in neighborhoods that need that development, especially neighborhoods in North City, and that would also allow us to alleviate some of that tax burden. So I used some publicly available data and some financial models to be able to see what would it be if we had what would an equitable tax rate look like if it were based on your tax would be a percentage of the neighborhood's median income, accounting for several other factors. And there's a way to, and of course this mine is very simplistic, but that's where we would like the Board of Aldermen input and insight and allow them to work their magic. But there is a way that we could not reduce the amount that the district gets in, but also be more equitable in our approach to the dollars that we do take in from the community, seeing as the property tax on housing, so the housing property tax is a significant part of city taxes. Do I need to read out the resolution?
You do not. I don't believe Mr. St. Elmer is not saying yes. So would you like to make a motion that we adopt this resolution?
Well, it is a draft. I would like to make another draft. So I would just like input from it. So I just wanted to bring it up. But I know that, again, for the meeting, that would be the point of, or one of the points to bring it up in the meeting. But I want to make sure it's its best version before we get there. So I don't need it to be adopted now. I think it does probably, I don't think the first draft should be the final draft. But I just want to make the board aware, make the public aware, and have something for our joint meeting.
Are there any questions for Mr. Lane or input, feedback for him?
I just want to say that I appreciate the initiative that you took after these issues that I raised at our tax levy meeting. As I said via phone, would be glad to work with you on this, and I was a little surprised that you chose this topic, but I think that we need to do some work around it, and I would like to schedule that with you because there's a little bit of background information that is missing, and some of the data needs to be filled in and corrected. So yeah, let's try to schedule that so that we can have a really strong resolution that can't be weakened, or that we don't have to come up with something redundant for the state legislature as well.
Anything else on this item? Did you want to say anything? No. Okay, so moving on. Ms. Val has a bylaw to present.
So this is a bylaw that would include a student representative on our board to participate in discussions but not have voting power. This is a draft, and Dr. Roberts had actually mentioned looking at Pattonville's model, and I kind of wanted to work with her on that, or if you have suggestions now, if there's an amendment or something that you could make, then I would love to hear about that. But it's just basically something for the board to consider. Is this reasonable? Is there a timeline that we want to place on it? Is it something that we want to move forward with?
So do you want to make a motion, or are you just presenting it to us for discussion?
I mean, I guess it's just open for discussion, unless you want to make a motion before we have discussion.
No. Okay. Just wanted to make sure we were clear on what the goal was.
As a point of discussion, I agree that we want to include student input. Thank you for recognizing the Pattonville model. I think we are a team that's building the bridge and walking on it, and I think we need our footing before we expand to include students. So determine a time where we can meet. You said you wanted to meet around it.
Are there questions? Natalie, do you have any rationale that you wanted to share with why this is?
So yeah, I guess on our September 5th special work session, it was repeatedly mentioned that we need to listen to our students, that we can't just make decisions for them and hand them down and hope they work. So gaining that insight from them as we discuss these matters when we're making decisions for their futures, I think it's important to take that community input into account. The other thing that I would point out is that the language of the bylaw says that the board retains authority to suspend, revoke, or terminate the student representative, and that we may include one student representative, so we do not have to at any particular point in time, and that could be amended or suspended if needed. For instance, if there was, a very sensitive issue that we needed to discuss in public session, that it would not be appropriate for the student to be at or something. I don't see that happening, but just to give us the authority.
Any other comments on this item? So I think for the two draft proposals, are either of you looking to bring something back for a vote at the November meeting? What is your timeline, just out of curiosity, so that we can all be prepared?
I would be comfortable with submitting a second draft or withdrawing this based on feedback after Dr. Roberts and I meet and ask for the resolution. I hope to propose a substitute resolution or work with Mr. Lane to get things unified so that we can produce one comprehensive document. So by November.
By November, does that timeframe work for you?
If any board members have any feedback, you can definitely email me.
Okay, so we will be looking for those in November. Okay, so board member reports. Donna, do you want to start, or Natalie?
Kind of a lengthy report, I apologize. The MSBA Board of Directors voted to move the annual conference and it has officially been announced and voted on as moving to the Kansas City Marriott downtown. So that starts next fall. I, along with Dr. Roberts, had the opportunity to attend the Board President Workshop and the MSBA Conference this year. The Board President Workshop, the focus was on conflict resolution, communications, and leadership. There were some training tools I found very useful, and I have copies for all the board members that I have received written permission to distribute, and I can email those if you prefer, and I do have copies for the audience, but it's just kind of some communications guidelines, essentially. So the person who led this was Sarah Reed. She has been involved in other urban districts, and I do think that as we move forward with planning our further training, that she might be a great asset if there's any way to reach out to her. I think Dr. Roberts and I both agreed she did a pretty good job in the presentation, and Dr. Roberts will fill in more on that with her report. I'll spare you the recap of all of the different breakout sessions. I believe that material is available on the MSBA website, the presentations. The delegate assembly, as you are probably aware, we get 2 delegates for the Missouri School Boards Association to help them set their policy guidelines and their advocacy positions for the next year. There was an item that I moved that we take separately. It was surrounding criminal background checks for school board members. We do not have any mechanism by which our state reps and our senators, I mean they're sitting senators that have records. It may be preclusive of people who have the same mental health issues surrounding trauma that our kids have. So it could become a mandatory oppressive barrier that results in lower outcomes for our students with respect to cultural proficiency. There are some other legal issues surrounding that, and I emailed Dr. Roberts the full rationale. I'm glad to share that with anyone else who has that, who has concerns, and I have a copy here. But it did receive it was positively received of 145 nearly unanimous consent votes in favor of the other amendments. This received 99 yes votes and 48 no votes, and over half a dozen people came up to me afterwards letting me know that they appreciated that and that they had changed their votes. Ms. Susan Goldhammer, the MSBA, offered her assistance with changing some legal language surrounding this advocacy statement, pending maybe something that we could discuss as a full board in a work session. But yeah, basically the idea was to make sure that we don't place any extra requirements on school boards that we don't on other legislators, and that we are allowing people to run for office who can truly represent our kids. Lastly was, as President Rhodey Collins mentioned at our last meeting, we will be working with Kansas City Public Schools and the MSBA to develop some legislative priorities, specifically centered on violence and urban issues. Excuse me. So I'll kind of run through what those were. In attendance was the Kansas City Public Schools Board President, Patty Mansour, and some of their officers, Dr. Bedell from KCPS, their superintendent, Dr. Paula Knight as our district representative, President Rhodey Collins via phone, and myself as the MSBA Board of Directors representative. The KCPS Board President is also on the MSBA Board of Directors. So we wanted to create manageable and concrete goals, define our priorities, and we identified our community allies that have branches both in St. Louis and Kansas City so that we can strengthen our statewide, replicate these programs across the state. So we have some stopgap and immediate asks, which are keep schools open longer as a hub for community and families, increase the counseling services, job training, and the potential role of police officers. Our long-term goals are more affordable and stable housing, mental health, educational alignment to other districts, the priorities of police and their enforcement, and the unfair tax burdens on urban citizens. So the legislative approaches are building a coalition, and we need to follow up with our lobbyist on that. The government has a task force currently on violence, and we are looking at this as an opportunity for a proposal for funding for initiatives that may help our district. So we are looking for universal statements that affect our district that can also appeal to the rest of the state so that MSBA can really get behind us and help us. There are some other things that I can discuss with you, I think, after I clear it with MSBA on the specific strategies. But we are considering repeals versus new laws, like the transportation budget that we're held to different standards to, the different standards for our retirement system, having an LRA and our tax collection methods, which is not applicable to any other county in Missouri, and any other laws that correlate with the causation of trauma, violence, the root causes of bullying, and anything else Dr. Bedell wanted to emphasize the unstableness of our housing policy and create static communities, and the educational experimentation on Kansas City and St. Louis, and stop perpetuating hopelessness was his term. I thought was pretty poignant. So charter schools, separate pension systems, transportation, all of those issues affect St. Louis and Kansas City specifically, and we are looking to be more unified and more fairly funded by the state moving forward. I think that is all. Anybody have any questions for me, or do you want to email me? I think that'd probably be easier.
I just have a quick question. You mentioned two things. One being the amendment that you pulled, and the second one being a meeting with the Kansas City schools. Was that some information that was shared with the board?
I think I just shared that. What other questions did you have?
I just wanted to know, as a point of clarity, you mentioned two things. One was the amendment that you pulled from the platform that referenced background checks, and you made specific comments about St. Louis Public Schools. And the other one being the meeting with the Kansas City team. Was that information shared with the board? I think I may have missed it. I was there at that MSBA meeting, and I was unaware of the meeting with Kansas City.
So the St. Louis board selected their members and representatives. President Rhodey Collins, Dr. Adams, and myself met to decide who would be representing us. Kansas City decided who was representing them. And that was shared with the board that it would happen. The specific mechanics, I don't believe were, or maybe they were, Dorothy, I'm not sure.
I mentioned that we were working together and that we were collaborating at it. I'm trying to think of the date. It was before, I don't know, what month is this? October? So it was before, it was at the work session. It was shared and discussed, or shared, not discussed.
So the rest of the information I intended to include in my board report, which I did rather than sending it out in an email. I wanted to make that a public presentation, publicly available to other board members and audience members. What was your other question? Or was that it?
You've answered them.
Okay.
Dr. Adams. I too was in attendance at the MSBA conference, and I planned to share a PowerPoint, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to share a few highlights. The purpose is very important, is to provide outstanding learning opportunities designed to improve the board's knowledge and skills as education leaders in Missouri. And that's one of the points that this board has decided that we would work toward advancing our accreditation. And this is our certification. And this is one of the means by which we can do that. I did want to share that one of the presentations I attended was conducted by Mr. Dickey. We do have a reading initiative in the district, and I would ask that we just kind of take a look at the strategies that he's employing for reading. Leadership development, again, is one of the things that as a board we determined that we would do, and I'm happy to report that I've completed the MSBA requirements for advanced certification. CBM credit is what it's called. delegate assembly handbook. I had an opportunity to participate in that process. The MSBA puts together a platform, the delegates vote on that. One of the big recommendations that I would make is that the little clickers that we use to vote with work. I had 5, and of the 5, none of them worked. The Delegate Assembly again advocates for Missouri schools, and they vote on the platform established by MSBA. My takeaways from the conference: opportunity, 1, to network with other school board members across the state, and it underscores the fact that our role is one of governance and not of operations. Operations belongs to the superintendent. I also had the opportunity to sit in on the secretary workshop, and the one takeaway from that was a system called Assemblies, and it is an integrated module which collapses meetings, planning, policies, and evaluations in a localized way so that we have a clear understanding of the work we're doing. That was a member of the school secretaries. Most of those persons are district employees. The board secretary session, again, I've shared with you that piece, and I will leave that here to be shared with who takes care of that digital platform. The agenda for the day, these are the 3 main things that were discussed in the board president's training session. My takeaway: resist being managed by the superintendent and work in concert with board members to develop a common message and scripts. Listen without interruption, asking and sharing are all critical. Dialogue is not debate, discussion, or deliberation. It's an inclusive process. The dangerous D's: deflection, distortion, dismissal, and denial are things that we all should stay clear of. Next slide, please. And takeaways to explore. The school district of University City has a resolution. It's called Humanizing the School District. There was really some great information shared there. I have a copy that I will share with the board. The other item was the Pattonvilles. They have a student group that works primarily with the board and the administration to come up with issues and solutions that impact the district, and the school voices. I mean, the students were incredible, and this practice has been in place for 25 years, so I know it's something that we can take a look at and maybe benefit from. And lastly, the use of book studies. A lot of the school districts there, moving toward innovation, use book study as a means of leveling the playing field for all of the board members. And I'll stop there. That's pretty much captured my takeaways. Again, I've shared the complete PowerPoint with the members of the board in their email.
Okay, I also have a little bit of a lengthy one. So I am excited to say that I was accepted to a cohort for a certificate in education finance from Georgetown. And so I'll be doing that after I finished my current studies, but I wanted to give you that information, and I'll have more about what specific topics we'll be covering later. Speaking of my studies, I have the opportunity to work closely with University City right now because I'm doing my dissertation research there. And so I will be attending sessions at their high school and be in communication with their principal and staff. Just some things that have happened in the community. Myself and some other board members were able to attend the Excellence in Education event, which was beautiful. Mr. Gaines also graciously invited us to a get-together in his yard, which was also lovely. I, along with, I guess, a couple other board members, was able to attend the panel that was put on by several organizations, including the We Power group, this past Saturday, 2 Saturdays ago. And so, with Dr. Adams, and they were able to present on a panel. I have future meetings with former board members that I'd like to make, just to understand the history and context of the board, and so that's something that I'll be wanting to bring up with you all in a future meeting. I also was discussing listening sessions, and I know it's something that we've talked about, but I'll be probably asking if we can create one, especially for teachers, potentially toward the end of the year. I know teachers are really busy and our agenda is extremely packed right now, but also to give them the opportunity to reflect to us. I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Adams to revise our vendor contract to ensure that it provides more data on student outcomes. And we have a future meeting scheduled to continue that discussion. I did want to also report that I was intending to present a bylaw today, but that has been delayed, so I'll be presenting it as soon as possible. And then also that I have been looking at potential budget. Our policies are, as you know, pretty old, and so we've talked about that as a group. And so I recently, over the weekend maybe, went through the policies on the website and have identified specific policies, especially in relation to budget, that I think would be most helpful to rewrite or amend. And so I'll be bringing those up at a future session as well. I think at this point, I'd like the superintendent and the president's blessing to break protocol and respond to an earlier comment.
Mr. St. Omer, do you have any objection or advice?
Okay, so I know most of the We Power folks who have left. I'm disappointed, surprised, and a little confused, particularly because I received an email regarding policy from Ms. Nolan at 1:30 today, which did not indicate to me that she thought that I was blocking policy. I also was confused that there were no examples provided, but my name was called out in particular of the 4 people who had been signing onto these policies. Again, without the use of examples. And so I think that the last thing that I would like to say is I hear a lot from We Power about transparency and collaboration, and it's something that I know we talk a lot about as well. I have to believe that it is possible, because if I didn't believe that, then we would have no hope for the students and the children in the city of St. Louis. But that said, in my mind, the behavior today exhibited the opposite, and that applies to both the strange recording that she said that she agreed with, as well as the lack of communicating with me previously if she was having issues with my behavior as a board member. And so I always appreciate being called out. If anyone here has a problem, please contact me. I don't mind if it's at a board meeting, but I would rather have a conversation about it. And I think that's how we move forward.
Someone who's been working with young people and communities your entire young career, for providing a lot of context that a lot of people in that room wouldn't have otherwise had. I also want to thank Dr. Adams. I know when we had spoken at the event, you had talked about being committed to that event and being there the entire time. I was there again just for the panel, but as I circulated the room after the discussion, there was a lot of, many people had compliments for your honesty and candor at the event. I think there's great discussion, great collective thought and strategy formulation, and I just hope that as a board we are open to absorbing that and open to having those conversations. The second thing, I attended the first budget forum that the district held. Attended the first budget forum that the district held. The attendance was extremely low. I think most of the people in there were board members or district employees. And I don't fault the people who weren't there too much. I think that often what I'm noticing is that we have a field of dreams mentality when it comes to a lot of the events that we put on. Like, if we build it, they will come. And I don't think that's enough. I think if we build it intentionally, people will come. One question that I asked Dr. Adams, and he did answer it at the forum, was how do we want people to be involved? So we say we want people to be a part of this process, but we haven't told people how. So we don't really have an expectation or vision around that. And if we do have an expectation or vision, I think that is important to share that with the greater community and allow them to make that decision. But I think, again, if we build things intentionally and we structure it in an intentional way to involve and incite input, I think we will definitely get that response. And it's for those reasons and many more that I do recommend that this board put We Power on the agenda so that we can hear what they have to say and see what input they're bringing. Because we're saying people aren't showing up. Well, we had many people show up today, and the last board meeting, and the meeting before that, and the meeting before that, and the meeting before that, and I can keep going. So we have people showing up. I think that we do put them on the agenda and we do have that conversation. Thank you.
So I have a couple business items. So as Dr. Adams already mentioned, we do have the upcoming budget forums. I believe there are some flyers by the agenda. If you have not seen those, please take one with you. The MSBA has proposed several training dates, so I'm going to read them off here, and I will be following up with you in email, so we don't have to decide tonight. The proposed dates, this is for the superintendent evaluation module. So those dates are November 23rd, December 7th, and December 14th. Those will be the dates that we're choosing from, so I will be sending out an email ideally tomorrow, looking for a response by the end of the weekend so we can begin scheduling with MSBA. What I will be asking you for are dates that you cannot make, because that generally has worked for us in the past. Yes, so that's November 23rd. These are all Saturdays, by the way. I would anticipate a similar format to what we've done in the past, which is like 8 to noon. I believe it's supposed to be a 4-hour module. So 11:23, 12:07, and 12:14. Those are the kind of trying to steer clear of holidays and allow for appropriate time for planning. Currently on our schedule, our calendar of events, the November and December work sessions have not been scheduled, and that is because both of them fall during holiday week. So the November is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, which school is still in session, so if we want to have a meeting that night, I don't see why we couldn't, but I wanted to make sure we kind of gathered information about that. And then in December, the meeting is, I believe, on Christmas Eve. So the district is not open that day. So what I will be sending out are some options for those dates as well. I suppose I should ask, does the board feel like having work sessions in November or December are something that we want to prioritize? In the past, the reason I'm asking, in the past we have canceled those due to kind of essentially holiday schedules, but this year I'm asking, do you want to have them? And it just kind of, if there is some feedback on that.
All right. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think that given the amount of work that we have to do and that we have to catch up as a governing board, we are kind of hitting the ground running. We have so much that I feel like we never finish. Discussions that don't get finished, business items that keep getting pushed off. I would strongly hope that maybe we don't have full attendance, but that we can keep those on the schedule and trust that 4 or 5 board members, as long as we have a quorum, can proceed with work.
I strongly agree with that.
Any other? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Donna, okay. So I'll be looking for that. The email tomorrow will have possible dates. I'll be sending that to Dr. Adams and Mr. St. Omer and Ms. Lewis as well, because we obviously need staff to support. So the other item that I have to report in my board president report, and then we do have Dr. Roberts, new item 10. So as my other board members have previously mentioned, I was a participant at the EdNext STL panel 2 weeks ago. So I just wanted to share a little bit about how that event came to be, how it came to be that I participated in that event, because I know that I didn't provide you with a lot of information prior, and that was because I didn't have it. So I wanted to share with you kind of the events that took place around the setup of the event. So in the very early in August, I received an invitation by Mr. David Dwight stating that they were having this event, kind of gave me a brief synopsis of what that event would be. I asked what I felt were pertinent questions: who else is attending, who's going to be at the panel, what is the goals of the event, and was told at that time there would be a pre-call with all panelists in early September. They'd be providing us with all the additional documentation. Unfortunately, I was not able to obtain any of that information until the night before, which to me makes it difficult to have a thoughtful and intentional discussion. So I do have those slides electronically now. I will make sure that I send them out to the board so you have them for your reference. What you will see is a lot of data that was focused on SLPS. So my concern, and I shared this at the event, was that this was an event very strongly focused on us as a district without any intentionality pulling us into the planning of that event or asking for our participation. So in the future, I hope that when organizations are looking to have events about us as a district, we are able to participate in that planning process, because if we're wanting a truly informed event where we can have a lot of concrete takeaways that are powerful and impactful for our students, I think it's important that we are there. So that would be my recommendation in the future. But like I said, I will be sending out those slides so you're able to see. I know that it conflicted with the MSBA conference, and for other reasons you all were not able to attend, so I'll make sure that you get that. Dr. Roberts.
Thank you. Again, I am asking my fellow board members to approve the establishment of a committee to discuss the superintendent's evaluation.
So, Dr. Roberts, tonight is for a discussion about the formation. Tonight will not be about voting to form the committee.
Okay. Now say that again for me.
The board amended the agenda tonight so that it could discuss a possible future formation, but it was not on the agenda prior tonight as an action item, and so it would not be appropriate to form the committee tonight. Okay. You did amend the agenda for discussion this evening.
So Dr. Roberts, to open up discussion, could you just let us know what you feel the purpose, need for the committee is, and how would you like to go about that?
Thank you, both of you, for the clarity. It's important that we begin the discussion. The window opened in July and July and August, and we have yet to prepare to interface with MSBA around that very important guiding document. So that's why I'm asking for a discussion. Any questions?
you think the committee would need? If this committee were established, what do you think it would need to be as successful, or be successful in your opinion?
Well, MSBA has a document, a guiding document that we can use. It would also help us to frame what the focus areas would be, the strategy and the like.
And would this just be a board committee, or would this be open to the public?
This would, since it's dealing, Mr. St. Omer, give me some direction.
Generally, committees are open to the public to the extent that it is, for example, a meeting to create an evaluation tool that could arguably be open to the public. To the extent that a discussion was going to be had about an individual or the individual's merits or performance, it would not be appropriate to have that discussion in the public setting.
So if past evaluations were something that were discussed in that meeting, that wouldn't be allowed for public. Do you have any questions or asks of the board, Dr. Roberts?
I'd like to understand from, or hear from members of the board, their feeling around the establishment of a committee for that purpose.
I guess I do have a couple of questions. I know that we at the retreat established some goals. So I'm wondering how those would play into the conversation, or if you are imagining them playing into the conversation about the superintendent evaluation.
Ms. St. Omer, can I respond?
I'm not sure I understand.
At the retreat that we had a discussion about the goals that we had for the superintendent. So I was just wondering if the 5 sort of things that we were focusing on.
If I could.
Yes, sorry.
The agenda for tonight's meeting was amended to discuss whether or not there would be a formation of a committee. That really is the limited item for which your discussion is tonight, is the formation of a committee. What I would caution this body against is any discussion about an individual's performance in a public setting. To the extent that you want to discuss how you go about, the future formation of this committee, that all makes appropriate sense, but to avoid any kind of individual discussion in this context.
Sure. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. It sounds like
We're figuring it out together. So are we ready to vote then to have?
No, there will be no vote tonight.
Okay, so we're done.
Well, and I have one more question. Does it make sense to have a committee if it would just be a board discussion? Because it would only be board members participating, and that's something that would be on our agenda anyway.
What I'm fearful of is not having something in hand going into a session. And so if the discussion leads to some ideas that we can bring to our planning session versus being led through that session by MSBA as we were led through the session for our priorities. That's what I want to be sure that does not happen.
I understand, thank you.
Are there any other other comments or questions for Dr. Roberts? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn open session?
Just adjourn.
Re-adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Lewis?
Ms. Nana-Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Jones is absent. Mr. White?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Dr. Roberts? Yes. Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Brody Collins?
Yes.
We are adjourned.